in terms of the lymphatic system, which is going to be a specialized system of not really blood vessels, but vessels for extracellular fluid that we're going to call lymph. And then we're going to talk specifically about the immune system next time. Now, because we do have a little bit of extra time, we are going to maybe be a little bit more lecture heavy on this stuff than normal, but that's okay. Now, the lymphatic system is one of those systems that most of us have likely never heard of before having had this class, okay? That's because this is not something that you tend to hear about a lot, other than someone saying, oh, you have swollen lymph nodes or something like that. That tends to be the extent of us hearing about lymph nodes, okay, or the lymphatic systems, that we know there are such a thing as lymph nodes, and we may know where a couple of them are. Like you may have had a doctor kind of feel the back of your throat or something, or that feel your neck, looking for swollen lymph nodes in your neck, okay? Now, what the lymphatic system is, it's basically going to be a system that is going to transport and house white blood cells, okay, as well as other immune cells, but primarily it's going to be lymphocytes. The whole goal here is for us to be able to hold on to our white blood cells in very particular places, as well as letting them cycle from lymph node to lymph node to lymph node, so that we can continually move all of our white blood cells everywhere else in our body that is not our blood, okay? That is important here, that this is not the bloodstream, okay? Instead, these are white blood cells that tend to wander and meander through the body and in your extracellular fluid. So extracellular fluid, meaning the fluid that is outside your cells, okay? Now, this also tells us that we're going to have a way of getting the excess fluid that is kind of in between our cells into the lymphatic system in the first place. So this is not going to be like your capillaries and veins and things like that, where you expect to see everything being in these nice closed loops. That is actually not the case at all. The lymphatic system is open, okay? We don't have closed loops where things are gonna go from point A to point B back to point A again. That's not really how this works. Instead, we're going to have capillaries, and we're gonna have the lymphatic vessels just kind of reaching into them, and that's where the lymphoid vessels are going to start, okay? Now, this is important though, because say we have a bunch of excess fluid moving through our body. So say you've taken a bet that you could drink 3 gallons of water over the course of a day, okay? Don't do that, probably not safe. But say you did that, so you started drinking a whole bunch of water. Well, that water is going to leave your bloodstream and into your tissues, because your tissues then would have a lower water concentration than your blood. So that water is going to go out into your tissues somewhat. Well, as you slowly bring your blood volume back to normal, we now have a bunch of excess water in the tissues. How do we get that water where we can drain it? Because in order for us to drain it, we have to get it to the kidneys, which means we have to reabsorb it and then get it back into the blood somehow. So this is where your lymph vessels are also going to come into play. They're going to help us absorb any of that excess fluid from our tissues and take it back to the blood, where we can then eliminate it, or at least move it where it needs to go, okay? Now, we have 3 major parts here. We have the lymphatic vessels. We will also have some specialized lymphoid tissues, as well as some specialized lymphoid organs, okay? Now, the fluid in this case, though, is what we're going to call lymph. Now, just interesting tidbit here, invertebrates, or a lot of invertebrates, don't actually have true blood. They actually have what a fluid, or a single bodily fluid that we would actually call hemolymph, because it's going to contain both blood portions as well as provide the system, or the function of the lymphatic tissue. So we combine the two terms. So we don't say that they have blood, and in a lot of cases we say that they have hemolymph. This is the case for things like spiders and stuff like that. All right, so here we have our lymphatic system. Let me blow this picture up a little bit so maybe we can see it a little better. All right, now what we're looking at here is all of the lymph vessels. Now, the lymph vessels are usually going to be coded in green. So the same thing is going to be true if you were to look at our torso models or anything like that. If you ever see a green line, those green lines are going to be referring to the lymphatic system. Now, you'll notice, though, that these are going to run basically in parallel and be found everywhere where you would find blood vessels, okay? That's because our lymphatic system is going to be closely related to our blood, okay? We are going to actually have the lymphatic vessels interact with the blood vessels, particularly at our capillaries. But one big difference is that these tubes are all one way, okay? Anything from pretty much the heart down is going to be trying to drain into the left subclavian branch up here. So the left subclavian vein, which would then get carried into the superior vena cava and then back into the heart. Okay, so all of this stuff down here, both feet are going to come up through all of these lymphatic vessels through the legs, past all of these inguinal lymph nodes, up through the cisterna chyli, and then up through our thoracic duct, and then finally over here to our left subclavian vein. Now, our right arm and the right side of our head will drain into this structure here, which is called the right lymphatic duct. This is basically going to be the right-hand side of the head, and the right arm is going to drain over here onto the right side. Everything else is going to drain over here onto the left. Now, that is the actual vessels themselves. Now, one interesting thing with our vessels here, and we're going to see them a little closer here in a minute, is that these vessels, because these are going to be low pressure, once again, we want to keep things from moving backwards or keep fluid from moving backwards. So we're going to, once again, use what? What did we have in place in the veins to prevent blood flow from going backwards? What did we call the little divisions in the veins that kept blood from going backwards?
Valves.
Valves. Okay, so we used valves to keep the blood flow from going black. So now we're going to do the same thing with our lymphatic vessels. We're going to see these little valves in the lymphatic vessels once again to keep the fluid moving in one direction. So that is the lymphatic vessels. Now you're also going to see several little bumps associated with each of these vessels or with these vessels. Particularly large concentration of these are going to be in the inguinal region, as well as kind of near the gut, as well as in the axillary regions and kind of up here in the head and neck, okay? These are what we're going to call lymph nodes. So anytime you see one of these little bumps, that is a lymph node. Now we have particularly high concentrations of lymph nodes, like I said, around our gut, in the inguinal region here, the axillary region, cervical region, okay? Now that's because these are good sources of input to the body, okay? At least most or some of these can be good sources of input to the body, but in the case of the inguinal regions and the axillary regions, these are basically also just kind of good stopping points before we enter the main larger pathways of the lymphatic system to take things back in. So we basically can collect all the stuff from the legs and the arms and those axillary and inguinal regions, okay? Now, those are the vessels and lymph nodes and kind of where they're typically positioned. But we've also got a few other structures here. Some of those secondary or primary structures here, we of course have our thymus, which is usually found right here above the heart. Now keep in mind that this is an adult, so the thymus is fairly small. In a child, remember the thymus is going to be much, much, much larger, okay? So much larger thymus in a child than in an adult. Here, it's nice and small because this is an adult. We also have our spleen. So our spleen is going to be very important in helping us make sure that we are getting things out of the blood that do not need to be there, okay? As well as kind of dealing with blood cell maturation. And we've also got here underneath the spleen, what this is looking at is basically looking at one region of the small intestines. Throughout all of the intestines, we're going to have massive amounts of lymph vessels and lymph structures, specialized lymph nodes called Peyer's patches, but we also have lots of mucus associated with these areas, okay? So in these areas, we're going to have a lot of what we're going to call MALT, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. Mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, or MALT, okay? Why do you think we're going to have a bunch of lymphoid tissue associated with our intestines? If one of the primary roles of the lymph tissue is our immune system, our immune function, why do you think we're going to have a bunch of it in our gut? All right, so here's some food for thought. You have more bacteria living in your gut more bacterial cells living in your gut than you do human cells in your entire body. They're important. But that's a lot. You are physically outnumbered in cell count. Now, their cells are smaller, so, but outnumbered in cell count by the bacterial cells that are going to live in your gut. So doesn't it make sense then that you're going to have a hell of an immune response, or like at least a large immune system presence in your gut where you know there are potential pathogens? Does that make sense? Like, even if these things are your friends, that doesn't mean that you're not going to keep an eye on them and make sure that they're staying your friends. Like, have you ever eaten something and realized that all of a sudden the bacteria in your gut aren't your friends anymore? Like, say you go eat some ice cream after you've already had some sweets over the course of the day. What happens? Your stomach starts to hurt, right? Why? Why is it starting to hurt? Because you've all of a sudden fed a bunch of the bad bacteria in your gut, and they grow to a much larger proportion than they're supposed to be. So they outcompete some of the other things that are in your gut that are some of your better bacteria. That's because you gave them the wrong food. So that makes your gut very, very angry for a little while until you're able to knock those populations back down. How do we knock the populations back down? Using our immune system. Okay, so that would make sense then that we're going to have a lot of an immune sort of presence in these areas. Now, when we look at collecting our lymph, well, I guess let's talk about lymph a little bit. Now, lymph then is going to be a fluid that is going to have a bunch of white blood cells in it, okay? But it's primarily going to be, like I said, excess fluid that is going to be from around our tissue. So if it's excess fluid, that means we have a lot of water, as well as anything that is dissolved in that water. So we're going to have water, we're going to have dissolved solutes, and then that may include a little bit of, or like usually small amounts of proteins. However, this is also where we're going to find lots and lots of cell debris, because if cells break down and things like that. So say you have a muscle cell starting to break down, that cell, all of its cellular components, so all of those proteins, all of those sugars, all of that stuff is not going to be found in your blood. It's just going to be found in your extracellular fluid, which means we need to get rid of it. Okay, so we're going to take up all of that cell debris. This is also going to be true for pathogens. So say you have an infection in your throat. Well, that infection in your throat, we need to expose that pathogen to as many white blood cells as we possibly can. So we will actively pull those pathogens into our lymph so that they can get cycled around, so that they can have as many white blood cells look at it as is physically possible, so that we can make sure that we find the thing that can kill it. Okay, cancer cells can also sometimes end up in here as well. Okay, so this is going to be interstitial fluid that gets drained or absorbed back into these lymphatic vessels. So then we call it lymph. So it's water, dissolved solutes, proteins, things like that. Now, we have some specialized structures here at the ends of our lymphatic vessels, namely that we are going to be calling these lymphatic capillaries. Now, unlike the capillaries in the blood system, where capillaries were continuous with the arteries and veins, right? Arteries, arterioles, venules kind of split open, so we got a whole lot of surface area so we could have a lot of exchange happen in our capillaries, right? That is not really what's happening here. Instead, what we're going to have is we're going to have little closed end vessels. So see this thing that looks kind of like a little octopus tentacle? This then is the end of our lymphatic capillary. We're just going to stick these into various capillaries or into various tissues, so that if we have excess fluid ever in the tissues around them, that fluid is going to go pass through these kind of one-way valves, or these little openings in the walls of our lymphatic capillaries, and just enter the lymph, so that we can then pull those up to where they can then enter our lymphatic circulation, or really not circulation, enter the lymphatic vessels so that we can put it back into the veins. But this is also important so that we can make sure it's clean, okay? By pulling things into the lymph, we can then cycle it and move it through until we find a lymph node. When we find a lymph node, anything that is in that lymph is able to get looked at by all of the white blood cells that are hanging out in that lymph node, okay? So you can think about that as basically being like little police stations spread around, okay? So the only way for you to get back into the blood is for you to pass through several police stations that can make sure, hey, this person's on the up and up, like this person's fine. They have to go through several layers of background checks, basically, before they can get back into the blood. This way we can prevent pathogens and things like that from getting in the blood and causing infections in the blood. Because infections in the blood, don't know if y'all can know this already, but they're bad, okay? It's called sepsis, and it tends to not be a good thing for the patient, and is also kind of hard to fix, okay? So we can help alleviate that by making sure that any pathogens that do get potentially brought into the lymph get checked multiple times before they actually have a chance to make it back into the blood vessels. And they do this through, like I said, these little closed ends on the lymphatic capillaries. Now, we have some large lymphatic vessels, which are basically going to be our collecting points for our lymph. Okay, so just like we had very, very large veins that are collecting blood from large drainage areas, the same thing is going to be true for some of these lymphatic vessels. Now, one big one right here is our thoracic duct. So just anterior to your vertebrae, you're going to find a big line that is the thoracic duct. Okay, so this is basically going to be a big pathway that all of the fluid, or almost all of the lymph fluid from the legs and things like that, are going to have to move through that lymphatic duct, or sorry, thoracic duct, before they can re-enter up here in our left subclavian vein. Okay, so they enter once again in the left subclavian vein. That is where all of the lymph fluid from the left-hand side of the head, left arm, torso, abdomen, and legs are all going to drain is into the left subclavian vein. Now, as you can see here, it's going to run kind of in parallel to the azygous and hemiazygous veins, which remember are also kind of on the right and left sides of those vertebral bodies as well, okay? Now, at the base, or kind of inferior to the thoracic duct, or before the start of the thoracic duct, we're going to have this big kind of bulb. This big bulb is called the cisterna chyli, okay? So this is basically a large collection point for all of the various trunks for the abdominal region and the inguinal and femoral regions. Basically all of the fluid from the legs, those are going to be contained in their own trunks. We also have the lumbar region and the abdominal region. These are going to drain into this area as well through their own trunks. So these are all going to drain together into one particular place called the cisterna chyli. Okay, this is basically like your single large collecting point. We dump all of that stuff into this spot and then we send it on where it needs to go, okay? So those things all drain here into our cisterna chyli, which then goes up through our thoracic duct and then finally drains into our left subclavian vein. Notice that we have to go up and around here. So this one has this kind of little J hook before it comes down into our left subclavian vein, okay? You can also see that we have another branch that is going to be going up to the head and another branch that would be draining from the arm as well. So those will both drain into the most superior portion of our thoracic duct as well, okay? Now, we do have this little ladder step structure on either side associated with lymph nodes, basically for every rib as well. Now, the right side, we do have a couple of other trunks. We have a jugular trunk. Jugular makes sense. It's going to be coming from the brain. We have the right subclavian trunk, which is going to, of course, be draining from the arm. And these both drain into the structure, which is called the right lymphatic duct, which then drains into our superior vena cava, okay? So both of these then will drain back into venous blood flow right above the heart, so then we can cycle everything back around, okay? So we basically can get everything cleaned back out and say, okay, all of this stuff has been checked, it's all good. We can send it back into the blood where things are nice and happy. Oh, that picture is just tiny. All right, so one of the reasons this is important, though, is because keep in mind that we are going to have lots and lots of white blood cells living in these lymphatic regions. Each white blood cell is going to respond to very particular types of pathogens. Eosinophils, for instance, are going to be very good at responding to parasitic worms and large multicellular parasites and things like that. Something like a basophil might be very good at dealing with a fungal infection, okay? So different types of pathogens are going to have different types of white blood cells that are going to be better adapted to deal with those pathogens. So by bringing in parts and pieces of those pathogens into the lymph and exposing them to all of these different types of white blood cells, we can find the white blood cell that says, hey, I know this guy, I can fight this guy really well. So then we can make more of that particular white blood cell. So say you have an infection of worms. Well, you need more eosinophils to help you deal with that particular infection. So this is a way that we can expose it and say, okay, we need more of these so we can trigger that response. And that is by simply showing it to enough of these white blood cells to figure out which ones can fight it. Now, importantly here, we do have a special class of white blood cells, our lymphocytes, which are going to need to have things expressed to them before they can start their response. So our T lymphocytes are not going to be super common in blood. They tend to be a fairly low concentration. Instead, they're going to have a much higher concentration in our lymph nodes where they're waiting to be exposed to the pathogens that they can match, to the pathogens that they have the antibodies for, okay, or at least the binding domains for, okay? Now, we actually call them T lymphocytes because they mature here in our thymus. Thymus with a T, T cells with the T, right? So T cells have that big capitalized T because they mature here in our thymus. Now, one of the reasons that our thymus is so much larger when we are a child than we are as an adult, or they are as an adult, is because we get exposed to a lot more crap for the first time as a kid than we do as an adult. Most of the time when you're exposed to a pathogen as an adult, you have seen that pathogen before, okay? Not all the time, but usually that is the case. That is actually one of the functions that school does for us, is actually expose us to a whole bunch of really common pathogens over and over and over again until we get really good at fighting them, to the point where we tend to just be able to ignore them after a while, okay? That is actually an important part of the maturation of our immune system, is by getting lots of tests, okay? Exposure breeds immunity, basically. Now, because of that, or at least in part because of that, your thymus tends to be much larger when you are a child. You're getting more exposures, which means you are making more of these T cells to be able to respond to different types of pathogens throughout your childhood. So your thymus is going to tend to be a lot larger. As an adult, that is much more rare, so we don't need it in that particular role nearly as much. So our thymus tends to shrink, okay? So much so that we can actually see the shrinkage in it, even in the micrographs. All you see right here, see all this white open space? This is the adult thymus, okay? So this right side here is our adult thymus, but all this white stuff is adipose connective tissue. Only these little core bits that are dark are active thymus tissue. Here is that same magnification of a child's thymus. Notice that it's all active thymus tissue and there's a bunch of it, okay? That's because we're actively kind of maturing these T cells. Now, you may have heard of lymph nodes before. Like I said earlier, a lymph node is basically going to be like a little police station, or at least like a little collection station. What these are basically a place where we can have a lot of different white blood cells live and just kind of sit around and wait to be exposed to the pathogen that they can deal with very well, okay? So whenever a particular pathogen comes in, it's basically going to walk in or be brought in here, and all of these different white blood cells are basically going to see if they can interact with it. If they can't, they go back to doing their business, playing cards, whatever that may be, and waiting for the pathogen that they can deal with to come along, okay? But by cycling things through the lymph vessels, we can expose lots of cells to particular pathogens. Now, keep in mind that we are doing this based on usually a few different antigens on the outsides of the pathogen, okay? So only a handful of proteins on the outsides of these things might we be able to interact with. So there isn't a very high chance for any one particular white blood cell to be able to interact well with one of these pathogens. So we are having to expose thousands or tens of thousands of possible iterations of these white blood cells to particular pathogens until we find the one that matches, okay? Imagine like a 20,000 piece puzzle where you only have the one puzzle piece that can match it, Okay, that's kind of what we're doing here. You have to do a bunch of tests. So if we have to do a bunch of tests and we're having to do this in fluid, it would make sense then that we collect some of those things in particular places to make it easier for us to do this. This wouldn't happen very easily if we were just waiting to do this in the bloodstream. Now, something else that you can see here is that lots of different lymph vessels tend to lead into our lymph nodes, okay? So your lymph nodes will usually have multiple inputs to them. That way we can, once again, collect a whole bunch of stuff from lots of different places to expose them to the white blood cells. Now we're gonna have a little connective tissue capsule on the outside of this, just like you would expect. Then we're going to have a region here called the cortex. So each of these little pink and purple regions are what we're going to call the cortex, and we have specialized cells in here. So these are kind of our germinal centers. This is where we're going to house our proliferating B cells and things like that, that are going to help us respond to potential pathogens. Those are all going to live here kind of in these cortexes. So each of these big circles then is a nodule, okay? And then we're gonna have the insides of these and that germinal center be basically where our B cells are maturing, okay? Now, we can then lead down here into the medulla. We're gonna have some cords in here, basically connecting everything, as well as spaces called medullary sinuses. These will then drain out through the hilus or hilum. We're gonna see the same word for the kidney, and then finally out through a new lymphatic vessel. Okay, so an efferent lymphatic vessel. Now, here we have our spleen. I guess we'll talk about it a little bit first. So the spleen is going to be very important in our lymphatic structures as well. So the spleen is basically going to be not just a large, but it's the largest lymphoid organ that we have. It's going to be kind of right over here, just underneath your stomach and kind of to the left of your pancreas, or just lateral to your pancreas, okay? So it's kind of towards the outside. We would call this the left upper abdominal quadrant, okay? Now, it is this kind of round bean-shaped thing. It almost looks even like a half of a moon, okay? Now, it also has a little connective tissue capsule, as well as some trabeculae in it. So we still have this little eye of our kidney bean that we're once again going to call the hilum, and we have arteries and veins running to it. So here we have our pancreas, and here is your spleen right here. So if this is your chicken finger, here is the spleen just off the point of our chicken finger. So right here, okay? Now, in the spleen, we're going to find two particular bits of tissue. We're going to find what we're going to call white pulp, and we're going to find red pulp. Red pulp is red because this is where we're going to find erythrocytes. So erythrocytes, remember, are our red blood cells, okay? Now, we're also going to find all of the reticular tissue, or lots of the reticular tissue, that is going to give the spleen kind of its shape. This spleen then, in this red pulp, if we are holding a bunch of red blood cells, we're holding macrophages, we're holding platelets, we're holding B cells, this is a storage area. This is basically like a little warehouse, okay, for things like platelets and erythrocytes. Can you think of a scenario where you might need extra erythrocytes and extra platelets? So when might you need some extra erythrocytes and extra platelets? What are you losing if you, like, say you need extra red blood cells? What does that mean that you are losing?
Blood.
Blood. Why might you be losing blood?
Injury.
Because you're bleeding. Someone stabbed you, or you fell, or some other horrible thing happened, okay? You are losing blood. So if you are losing blood, we want to make sure that our blood stays nice and viscous, right? Nice and sticky. So what do we need more of? We need more red blood cells. So our spleen is a little warehouse where we have some extras kind of lying around. It's basically a parts shop for your blood, okay? You run out a little bit, like, oh, you notice that your engine's like burning through some oil. Does that mean you like do an oil change and check for a leak? No, most of you don't. You go to O'Reilly's and you dump a quart in and it's fine, right? This is basically that quart that you're dumping in, okay? Also, you should really not do that. If your engine's leaking oil, go get it fixed. It's just a head gasket or something like that. It's not that bad, okay? But it is important. It'll blow up your engine if you don't. My sister blew up her engine one time because it was leaking oil and she did not know it. And yeah, it completely seized it shut. It also squirted black oil because it was all burned, because it was too concentrated, and like shoved it all over her windscreen and all kinds of fun stuff. It was hilarious. I didn't actually feel bad at all. She knew better. Well, she should have known better. All right, so that is where we're going to store things like erythrocytes. Platelets, does that also make sense in the case of having a storage site for those for injury? Because what do platelets do again? What do thrombocytes or platelets do?
Stop bleeding.
They help clot blood, so they help us stop bleeding. So look, we have a storage site for both of the things that are necessary when you are bleeding. More of the stuff that tells it to stop, and more blood just in case, so that you have some extra oxygen floating around should you lose too much of it. So that tells us that our spleen is going to be important. Now, this is going to be found, like I said, in the red pulp. Now, we are going to find some white pulp in here as well. Now, the white pulp is going to be important because this is where our T cells and B cells are going to be living. So we're going to have a central artery coming into the spleen. So this is blood coming in. So clusters of T and B cells are going to live around it, once again, checking it for bad stuff. The reason T cells and B cells are important here, and the reason why we keep talking about T cells and B cells, or T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, is because T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes are specific. Your other white blood cells, like, they deal with classes of molecules or classes of pathogens. Like, one might be better at dealing with bacteria, one might be better at dealing with worms, one might be better at dealing with fungus. T cells and B cells don't deal with fungus. They deal with a protein on a fungus, very specifically shaped, so much so that if you change one single amino acid sometimes in a protein on the outside of something like, say, I don't know, a virus, all of a sudden the T cells and B cells that you had to deal with that may not be able to deal with it. So all of a sudden the thing can make you sick again. Does this sound like something y'all heard about in the news? It does. That's because COVID, all of the different strains of COVID you keep hearing about, and all of a sudden we're in, I don't even remember what the new strain is called, Omicron variant. The reason that's different is because it changed one of the antigens on the outside of the virus, which means we have to relearn how to fight it, because our body doesn't see this as, oh, it's just a slightly different version of the thing. That's not what the T cells and B cells see. This thing looks different than this, so it's a completely different thing, so we have to make all new cells. Okay, that's why these things can be bad. That's why changing viruses can be bad. Okay, so by keeping all of these T cells or T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes close to where we have big collections of blood coming into places, we can use this so that we can expose lots of them to all of the hundreds of thousands, or really an infinite number of potential pathogen molecules or antigen molecules, so that we can find the thing that we can use to fight it. So here we have a central artery kind of running through here, and all this white region right here that's kind of white, this is your white pulp. All of this other junk moving through here is your red pulp, and here we also have these little bridges of reticular tissue helping hold everything together. Now, you can remove the spleen, but it's usually not, or like most of us, the spleen is important, or at least is useful, but it can be removed, at least in certain ways. Now, another thing that you've likely heard, and this is a great time of year for it, is, because I know that this has been going around our daycare the last couple weeks, is tonsillitis. So itis simply means inflammation. Now, inflammation could be caused by any number of things. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be an infection. One common form of infection that can sometimes lead to tonsillitis is strep throat. Okay, now say you go to the doctor saying that your throat hurts. Your doctor is going to have you lift your chin, and they're going to touch at the back of your neck. What they're touching for, what they're feeling for, are one of these tonsils. Now, we have three different types of tonsils. Okay, we have our pharyngeal tonsils up here in our nasopharynx. We have our palatine tonsils, which are back here at the back of our tongue. So your palatine tonsils, thus closely related to your palate. So these are going to be associated with your tongue. But what your doctor's feeling for when they're feeling at the back of your throat is they're feeling for your lingual tonsils, because these are going to be kind of on the back 1/3 of the tongue, thus lingual, but they're also going to be positioned somewhat inferior. Okay. Now, what these are is these are actually not true lymph nodes. Instead, these are nodules. So if you look back at that lymph node picture that we saw before, how we had a bunch of nodules within a single lymph node, right? How we had each of those little purple and pink spots. Each of those purple and pink spots is our nodule. This is basically a really large one of those. These aren't subdivided in the same way that a regular lymph node might be. Instead, these are basically just a single large nodule. However, they are very, very important because these are found in the back of your nasal cavity before it gets to your mouth, and then a couple in your mouth. What do you think we are monitoring for? What do we tend to do with our nose and mouth? Smell. So we're pulling in air from outside. We eat and we breathe. What are you actively doing anytime you are eating and breathing? You are actively pulling things from the outside environment into your body. Things that are outside. Can you control what is happening outside of your nose and mouth? Nope. Which means there could be God only knows what is happening in that stuff, in that air that you are breathing in, or that food that you are breathing in. Like, have you ever seen a kid like walk around a store, all the stuff they touch, and where does their hand go immediately after they touch something that looks gross? Right into their mouth. Okay, it's like they want to taste what the 2-week-old M&M on the floor of Target tastes like, right? I say this from experience. Okay, I was also that kid. I ate dirt several times. It's fine. I've also tasted cow patties. Like, they were dried, probably. I don't remember, but I've also, like, I grew up on a farm. Like, I literally saw my granddad once drop his dentures like into a couple-day-old cow patty, pick them up, shake them off, wipe them on a shirt, and pop them back in. He made it to 80 or so. That's fine, right? Who needs to live past that? So this is where all of that outside stuff comes into our body, right? We need to check it. Like, if you run a baseball stadium, you're not just going to let everybody walk in, because what's going to happen the day you have a football game? Are you going to have more people come in than actually have tickets to the football game? Of course. So what do? You route everybody through a gate so that you can check their tickets, right? This is our gate. We route everybody past these tonsils to make sure, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? Okay. So this gives us an important kind of surveillance point for all of the stuff that's coming in. So much so that we even have specialized little holding cells. So we're going to call these tonsillar crypts. So we're basically going to have little divots, or it says invaginations up here. This simply means divot. Okay. So we're going to have these little holes that the material that we breathe in is going to get stuck in. If you've ever looked at your tonsils, so say you've kind of had someone shine a light back there, you just kind of say ah and take a picture of the back of your throat, and you see your tonsils, they're going to be these fairly large things, and they're going to have massive pits in them. They almost look like honeycombs. Okay, those pits are basically things to say, hey, whenever we breathe stuff in, it's going to get caught in here. It gets trapped. It gets trapped so that we can check it to make sure that it's okay. So like I said, that's where we're going to find those kind of lymphoid nodules in these regions. So your tonsils are very important because these are basically like checkpoints, like I said, for the stuff that's found outside of us. Now, so sometimes people will get persistent infections that keep happening. So they're constantly getting sick. They're constantly catching stuff and getting sick from it, or they're showing symptoms like they're sick. They may not necessarily be sick, or they may not necessarily be getting an infection. It could just be kind of overworking. But if they're constantly getting sick from them, sometimes what they'll do is they'll go in and take out a couple of those tonsils. So they'll take out the linguals, or they'll take out the palatines, and just let the rest of the immune system do the work. It's like, okay, like, yes, you are doing a good job catching the invaders, but you're honestly doing too good of a job because you're catching too much stuff and it's making you sick too often. Because sometimes what will happen is, for some of these people, their crypts may be too deep. It may be too difficult to get things out, which means they're going to be taking more stuff into them than they can necessarily fight off at the time. So these, instead of helping us get rid of infections or helping us prevent infections, instead just get infected on their own. And that's happening too often. So sometimes they'll go in and take them out and just let the rest of the immune system do the work. Because that's really what this is. This is kind of a training site. It's a capture site so that we can eliminate the things before they have a chance to make us sick. But if it's happening too often, it really just means like, okay, we have other white blood cells, we have other lymph nodes, we have all these other systems in place to help stop this. Like, this isn't necessarily doing us any favors. So sometimes they'll get rid of them just because they get infected in and of themselves because they're collecting too much stuff. Because you have a kid who's stupid like me and eats dirt. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's just bad luck. Yep. Yeah, and that's just because those little pockets are great places for those bacteria to sit. And if you don't have a strong enough immune system that's really, really fast at dealing with a thing, all of a sudden that's just a source now for it, like for infection. Because like, oh, look, now we have a nice place to grow, so they'll grow in there instead. And that can make it harder to clear those infections. So in those kinds of cases, they will remove them. And sometimes when they're going in to remove, they'll kind of remove multiple at a time. They might not just remove the palatines, they'll remove a little bit of the lingual, or they'll go up and they'll take out the nasopharynx, things like that. But they are usually, or they are a good source of information. Now, we talked about MALT before. So MALT, remember, stands for mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, okay? These are basically going to be essentially continuous lymph nodes, okay? Their whole point here between lymph nodes and or nodules and then the MALT, these are basically things that we can use to help defend against infection, holding things together so that we can have white blood cells getting exposed to stuff so that we can help or hopefully get rid of things. Now, MALT is going to be associated with tissues that have mucosa, which means this is what we're going to find in your respiratory pathways, in your urinary pathways, in your gastrointestinal tract. So anywhere where you might have mucus, so all of that gunk that you can hear in my voice right now, all of that mucus, those tissues that are aligned with that mucus have mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue moving through them, okay? Once again, makes sense, we're dealing with foreign substances here. Now, one great thing with mucus though, is that whenever we have mucus and you stick something bad to it, that means it's usually kind of stuck there for a little bit, so that we can actually use that mucus as a prominent site for our white blood cells to get exposed to things, because we can trap stuff in the mucus so that then we can help us eliminate it. So that's one of the functions that mucuses can help us serve. Now we have a special bit of mucosa-associated lymph tissue in our intestines. We're going to call these Peyer's patches. These are basically going to be special lymphoid nodules within our gastrointestinal tract. So we're going to see these big columns of digestive tissue, essentially kind of excretory and absorbing cells that are going to have lots and lots of these specialized little patches in them called Peyer's patches to help us deal with all that bad stuff. Because once again, there could be bad stuff in your food. Okay, how often have you eaten something and gotten sick afterwards because there was something in your food? So having the ability to fight things or find things wherever we'd be getting in touch with them helps make a lot of sense. All right, so that is it as far as our lymphatic system is concerned. So if you look in Blackboard, you're going to see a list of structures to be able to identify. This is basically going to be things like that thoracic duct, lymph nodes, the different tonsils, make sure you can identify which one is which, all of those kinds of things. So that's basically what we are working on today. It's pretty straightforward. Next time, we're going to talk about the immune system specifically. So we're going to talk about memory cells and killer T cells, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Next time is actually probably one of my favorite topics in all of biology because it's really, really fun. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about how some of these individual cell types and stuff like that work next time. However, we do have some anatomy for you to look at, so make sure you can figure out what all these parts and pieces are. There should be one. Is it not visible? God damn it, Matt.